Oh, you got a new phone?
Well, it's the old.
All right. Well, we are live.
We are.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Weekly Jargon. I'm Abel Perez,
Jose Rodriguez.
Rohi Zachariah.
and we are your three jargoneers ready for another wonderful show.
Do it.
What do we want to talk about today?
Well, Rohi brought up a pretty interesting topic, is what would it take for you to leave California? And Rohi's point is that there's folks leaving every day. And now the question is posed to me and you, Abel. What would it take for you to want to exit California, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the topic today. It's a very interesting topic because you hear it more and more in the news, companies, people exiting California. This is the first time where California hasn't grown, and it's over 100 years. So it's funny. I want to get to see your opinion as to why you think people are leaving, and would you leave, and what would it take for you to leave?
Yeah, obviously a hot topic, gets very political, right? And typically when you think about people leaving, it's always from this very blue state over to a very red state, right? And so you go and you hear conservative values and, less, restrictions on various different topics. So very easy for it to get into the political realm, which, is right, makes sense because politics isn't just a word. It is actually how we're governed and how we're required to live our lives, right? So also very important. So, Rohi, what is it? What is it going to take you to leave?
It comes up because, again, the people that I hear from, they make it like a fantasy land out there. Like, you leave California, it's going to be so glorious. And, when we think about it and we say, okay, realistically, what would it take? And I try to explain, at least for our position, we've kind of established ourselves here. I don't think of it just California, but Madera. This is our home. This is where we grew up, raising our kids, and we have our business. And to just uproot that and just to leave, there would have to be something significant. Something here would either have to change our business aspect or our lives so bad that we felt the need to leave. Because most of the things that they're leaving for is, obviously the crime issues and taxes. That's kind of like the one and two. The other one is just that they know that they can take their home now that's, a few thousand square feet, sell it for $500,000 and move to any other state and basically buy a mansion for it for a fraction of the cost, where that's still available. Obviously some states, have already, like Texas, have already seen those Californians move out and the price of property has gone up. But that's what I see. And, so I don't feel that for me to leave, there's going to be an improvement of life just yet that warrants the move. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same. I think just the fact that we're rooted here, my family's here, for me to want to get up and just leave, that's very, I think for many of us that have family in California or at least close by, that's probably the biggest thing. We talk about family, but like you said, I think something draconian would have to take place for me to say, you know what, there's no water, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
The valley is having issues with water, and that's something that could be a reality in the near future if we don't, look at and start really tackling on the issues with our aquifer. And obviously, I sit in the city council, so I have some insight as far as. But I think all of you, even the valley, has been in bad shape when it comes to its groundwater. And, this is why the state developed SGMA, which is the Groundwater Sustainable Management Act, to be able to reach balance. If you're going to pull out this much water from the ground, then you have to find a way to be able to recharge and bring it back to balance at some point. Because typically what we're doing is we're having these deficits over 160,000 acre feet of water that are being overdrafted, and how are you gonna? You can't survive on that. Mm-hmm. So essentially, cities like Madera and the Central Valley, they may reach a point where the cost of water for you and I may be really astronomically high, because now to pump that water and to get that water without any other solution, it becomes crazy. So. Mm-hmm. Water, I think, would be one of the issues. And again, you talked about sales tax. I'm not there yet where I feel like, the sales tax is really making it impossible for me to stay here in California. but certainly affordability with homes. And we're starting to see that more and more folks say, well, shit, I can't afford California anymore. So I'm going to move to Texas. And so as long as the jobs are there and there's opportunity, people will decide to migrate there. It was no different back when, the moment of that times of the grapes of wrath happened, right? People were looking for jobs, and California happened to have these jobs of agriculture. People migrated from all over the mid-states and Texas to come find work. So if those same opportunities exist in these different states, you may be seeing people going back to those areas where it's more affordable opportunity. But for now, I still think that we're still okay here in California, and I still wouldn't make that decision. How about you, Abel?
Yeah, I heard family, right? Roots, and this is where it's at. And I think for those reasons, that's what also keeps me grounded here. California being extremely diverse, and when we hone in specifically on Madera, a huge, Latino community, which, traditionally has strong family values, right? Where everybody still gets together for each other's birthdays, everybody lives relatively close. But it's not just Latinos, the Italians. Madera has a deep roots of Italians that have established here, and they're the exact same way with those cultural values. And so I think for the most part, that's what keeps a lot of people here. But I also think you got to look at what type of people are leaving. What are we talking about? Businesses, and if the answer is yes, and in these businesses, if corporate headquarters is in Atlanta, Georgia, well, yeah, it's going to be a lot easier for them to move operations across the map because they don't really have any ties to Madera. But now when we start talking about, or to California, when we start talking about farmers and things of that nature, usually when you see somebody selling off cattle or selling off the farm and moving out, they're almost just like selling off to the sunset, right? It's almost like, well, I'm retiring. I was pretty much done anyway, right? I could have probably managed these operations, for 5 more years, if things were a little bit better and if I was making a whole lot more money still, but I just don't want to deal with it. I'm gonna retire, right? And you see, the whole family, usually 10, 15 people pick up and leave, right? But those circumstances, in my opinion, are very rare. They don't make up the majority of people. So you don't see the impact of just waves of people moving. Our neighbors aren't moving, at least in my neighborhood, right? And my neighbors aren't, the big farmers or the big corporate, leaders. And so maybe that has a lot to do with it. But those individuals are staying put because they're pretty much in line with the type of lifestyle and moral values that I have, which involve your family, being close to your family, being close to your friends, people that you played Little League with, you're still saying what's up to, and things like that. So I think it's just it's at a higher level than where I'm at, and so it doesn't really affect me where I'm losing friends left and right because of it.
But if there was something that you would say, maybe your family started moving, would that then push you to want to say, you know what, maybe it's time for me to move on? My family's moved on. Or what would it take for you to say, yeah, I'm rooted. I know I'm rooted. But if push came to shove, what would it take for you to say, you know what, I'm bailing?
Yeah, it would. I think it would be an intrusion of my family's peace and liberty and ability and freedom. If I felt like that was being invaded or taken away, then I would do what I'd have to do to protect my family members, right? Fortunately for me, which isn't the case for a lot of individuals, but there, a lot of people have. There are a lot of people with undocumented family members. The majority of mine are fortunately documented, and so it wouldn't. I wouldn't say immigration specifically, but if it was, but it could be along those lines or anything else. If there were an invasion of our, peace and ability to have prosperity, then we may find a different state that fits the lifestyle that we prefer to live in.
And Roy, I think you said this several times, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when it comes to civil liberties, I think that's what people feel, is that they're being their civil liberties are being invaded in the form of maybe taxes, and it could be the state sales tax. So, what would you say about the state sales tax? Do you think it's that high to where it says, you know, I no longer want to live here because I'm paying too much taxes for what I'm getting in return? It's just not.
Well, and I think that's so. There's an illusion of taxes. So like people think, yeah, I'm going to move to this state because my taxes are lower. And we know people that live in that state, and they'll tell you, well, yeah, this tax is lower, but this tax is higher. You know, so it's almost equivalent. You know, but the difference is that every state that you go to, you'll hear things like, well, my DMV money, the roads are beautiful. Then you go to Oregon, they're perfect. You go to California, I pay way more than I would in Oregon, but my roads look like crap. You know, so I think people have that where they feel like things are just governed better in other states. That yes, you're still taking my money, but I can see it's being used properly. You know, where here it's definitely not. You know, as a business owner, you know, like things that California's trying to do now is, you know, basically make it to where retail theft, you can't do anything. Your employees can't stop somebody. You know, that's something they're trying to pass. So if you have a business and you're seeing this and you're saying, hey, criminals can just basically walk into your business, rip you off, and you can't do anything about it, you're going to see a lot of these, for one, mom and pop shops go out, and then you're going to start seeing what's already happening where like the Walmarts and the Targets are just locking everything up. And, you know, you don't have that other states. You have that here because retail crime is kind of it's an accepted thing now. So I think that's where you're going to start. You're seeing that shift of like, yeah, I mean, it's not really bad. Like I can still buy my milk, but am I going to have to call somebody to unlock my milk so that I can buy it? Yeah. Is that going to be the final straw? Or do I say, well, it's okay. I'm still getting it, you know?
And that's where, you know, business owners start getting, you know, feeling the pressures where it's like, you know, I'm losing inventory. Sure, I could file insurance claims, but then, you know, along with the topic, you now have insurance companies who are saying, man, California's too expensive to insure, you know, so we're gonna flee. We're no longer writing policy in California.
Well, either the business is going to close or your milk isn't going to go up another $1 because you have to pay for the gallon got stolen. Everybody's got to pay for that. You know?
So the way I look at it, that's a good point. But you heard it here first at the Weekly Jordan. If you get any ideas for any business venture or what have you, remember to take care of us. But, you know, I like what you said about the you know, when I get my gallon of milk and all, and that brought a good idea to me. It said, well, I mean, people are starting to get used to the idea of ordering things online. I look at Amazon, for example, and frankly, you know, if you go to a Walmart or something and you see the chaos sometimes, you know, a lot of traffic going through there, I mean, do you need to be there? Mm-hmm. Can you go online and just say, I need this, and that, and then, you know, I mean, it seems like more and more people are adapting to that type of lifestyle anyway. I start getting packages every day from Amazon, whether it be clothing or necessities or something that's non-perishable, right?
Is it Amazon? Let me buy their stuff real quick here.
but I'm starting to see that may be a way that Walmart may want to operate. You know, obviously, if that is the problem, because that is one of the questions that was asked, and I was telling you guys that there was an interview that happened between Hannity and Governor Newsom, and I thought he did a good job articulating well and answering the questions. But again, the legitimate concerns were, hey, this is why businesses are leaving, is because there is no ramifications. When you have theft going into these stores, they have to protect themselves, and there's nothing to really enforce those crimes that would prevent them from happening again and again and again. Again, businesses are losing money because it's inventory. Yeah, there are losses, insurance claims, what have you. But at the end of the day, you know, a business wants to operate where it feels that it's the safest. Mm-hmm. And if they find that, again, they have to have the clientele. You can't just say and pick up, I'm going to take my business to this remote area in Texas where I'm not getting a third of the clientele that I had here in California, right? So you have to weigh out those risks and see if it pans out. But I still feel that people are going to be leaving, if any, because of those factors. And you talked about that is my business is no longer safe. I no longer feel safe. My family here is no longer safe, and that's why they start leaving. So because there's such a demand, low inventory, and Abel can touch on this, it still creates people still, for some reason, they still love California. California is their place because it's still a lot of opportunities still for people to make a living here. And areas like Madera, for example, the Central Valley are still very affordable. Obviously, with the interest rates at a little higher, makes it difficult. But again, Abel and I have always talked about this. Don't marry the interest rate. Just date it for a bit. Make sure you get yourself a good home for a good price, and then come back, refinance. Now you got yourself, hopefully, some equity built in your home. But I don't know that you would get that in a different state. And I think people are starting to realize that now that they made the move, was this the best decision that happened, right? So I don't know your takes on that.
Yeah, no, I think real estate is, we do get, I like that point of, in other states, you assume that real estate's moving the same way it's moving here, appreciating the same way it appreciates here. But there are a lot of, city and states that just stay stagnant, and so your investment, you're kind of stuck. You buy and your house might depreciate in value depending on the circumstances, or just stay stagnant, and then it doesn't leave you with very much options. And so some of the more, individuals who go from like low middle class to like upper middle class, typically it's because of their investments in homes, in real estate, right? And in just a few short years, you can have, $100,000 of equity. And so you see individuals upgrading their homes, upgrading their lifestyles, moving to better, neighborhoods, things of that nature. So yeah, no, that is a good point, where as in other states, you may just be subjected to where you initially invested, right? And then that's kind of it. Your appreciation, what you can get in 2 or 3 years in California, it might take you 10 or 15 years in another state. So that definitely prolongs your ability to progress in life, right? Or economically. But yeah, and that's always what I hear too, is like, well, what are the job opportunities? Can you go out and make six figures in a different state? And sure, there's all types of different things, and you can sit there and say you could do that, but then when you move and you say, okay, well, if I'm going to Texas, I got to be in Dallas or Houston, right? Because that's where all the people are, and that's where my business can prosper. Well, you go over there, and now those home prices are nearly equivalent to California, right? Because everybody else had that same idea, and again, that's where all the people are. So everybody's, the economy as well. Now, if you're going to go to El Paso, Texas, you might have opportunity there, but now you're fighting the levels of crime that they have. So if you're fleeing here for crime reasons, well, guess what? There it is. Same things in areas like Boston and all the major cities or inner cities have. If you're going to New York, you don't think you're going to be in Manhattan, you're more likely going to be, in those outskirts or those pockets where crime still exists. There's still, dense populations. You're still going to have those same challenges that you have here. So it is a good topic. It is super tricky, because where the heck do you go?
Yeah.
Where would you go?
Well, I don't know, but there are several states within the country that are still fairly low, and one of them that I saw was Vermont. Arkansas was the other one. So
What's Vermont?
I go,
What are you going to do over there?
Latino
Crab fish,
population, very little, right?
He wants to be exotic.
but-
He's gonna open that Mexican
Yeah.
restaurant. There, right? Yeah.
But that's
I'm not
okay.
gonna know what it
See,
is.
that's the thing is that again, I don't know. I think my business really, what we do in our line of work is we depend a lot on folks that want a service in the industry of mortgages and real estate, right? So then I'd have to find a similar like service that I can provide to folks in a different demographic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it would be a risk for me to get out there and try to figure that out. I'm not saying Vermont. I'm not saying Arkansas, but these were the states where the prices were moderately low. And what I mean by that, there were anywhere between 2 to 3 times your annual salary. So, I mean, now here in California, especially around here, you're probably looking about 6 times your annual salary. So if you're making $50,000, then the average home price may be about $300,000. Again, that's a little bit steep for some folks, whereas in other states, it's between 2 to 4, which is more affordable, because that means that if you make 50 grand in Vermont, then a home for $200,000 would be more, it'd be flexible for your income that you make, right? Versus, being really tight. So I'd be looking for a place like that where I'd be very comfortable. Again, people have moved to North Carolina, Virginia, areas where they like all that, the forest, and they like to have a lot of pines out there. But those areas also are a lot of humidity, right? I mean, California, the thing about California is that we're 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away from your Pacific Ocean, and we're 2 hours away to one of the biggest national parks in the country, which is the Yosemite National Park. So if you wanted to go from an extreme cold, boom, you just have to be 2 hours away, which is up at the hills there, Tahoe not too far away. You want to go out
Did
to
you
the
say
ocean.
extreme cold?
Well, I'm not saying extreme. I'm saying that just
like
the extreme.
60s.
It never gets below 0 out there.
I mean, what I'm saying is
Yeah.
the temperatures are not as the valley here, right? Because
Yeah.
we're in a valley. And then you got your Pacific Ocean, Central Coast, San Francisco. You got a lot of different areas. So I think the Central Valley, that's why it's a mecca where you see a lot of different diverse cultures coming here, not agriculture, different industries. But it gives you an opportunity really to experience a little bit of what different climates in our state. We can see that in states like Florida, for example, you may see a lot of humidity. So as long as you can bear with that. And I think as you get older, people want to retire there. But I said, man, if I'm getting older, I don't want to be where it's really extremely humid.
Yeah.
If anything, I want to be where I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's nor here nor there. I'm just saying that if I was going to move, it had to make sense. The California is making adjustments again for folks that live in the Central Valley, for example, that are over 55 years old. They can now transfer that property tax base and transfer it to a different property in any other county here in California. So you don't have to. You're not stuck and confined to the Central Valley. If you can sell your home for $500,000 and buy something out in Monterey, maybe for $800,000, yeah, it's a little upgrade. But your property tax base won't be as much when you buy that new home out there. If you're 55 years older, instead it'll transfer, and the difference between both of those, yeah, there'll be an increase in your property tax base.
I haven't thought about how much politics must be involved with real estate in those areas, saying, city officials and county,
I'm
supervisors
sure.
saying, do not accept that offer.
I'm sure, but
do not accept that offer.
because again, it will decrease their coffers when it comes to property taxes, right?
Yeah.
Here, obviously, if we're selling homes for $500,000, then you can imagine that's going to be your base for property taxes, and again, more money into the coffers of the county, the city, and this is how we generate for services that we provide. But I think that makes me feel better that at some point, if I want to leave the valley and maybe get closer to maybe the foothills or maybe closer to San Diego, closer to the beach, that I have that opportunity. Again, I have to build the equity, get it done. I don't have any intention of moving anytime soon. But I mean, if I start hitting to that point where I'm 55, 60, and I'm able to do it, then I have the flexibility to do it, right? And that's how I would suggest is if I'm going to leave, it's not necessarily leave the state, maybe leave a different, maybe Madera, and maybe get myself closer to where better weather, for me as I get old and my aging state, maybe I need just to be a better climate.
But I think California's issue is that, there's plenty of reasons to leave. Why does that person in Texas come to California? I think, or anywhere in the country, I think that's what we're lacking is that as California, okay, the other 49 states, nobody's saying, yeah, I want to move to California. But everybody in California has got a dozen reasons of why they would leave. And it's so much so, the guy that came in yesterday, we were talking about it, he's leaving in a panic because he says now California is going to implement an exit tax. Because that's how bad California is going to bleed financially. Because like you said, who's leaving? People who are retiring or people with money? Because those are the people that can afford to uproot and move out. Well, that's your tax base. And they have to get that money from somewhere because we're, again, like you said, we're a handout state. We're,
I didn't say that.
Well, you're sanctuary state and you want to help the people in need and, all these things. Well, that money's got to come from somewhere. And it's taxes. And that comes from the people who pay their taxes. So.
And to your point, that's a lot of the employees that work for the state, that work as teachers, public works, or whatever the case may be, corrections, they depend on a state-funded pension, right? And it's these pensions that get taxed, right? And California taxes you for income, right? So I think people look at it this way, well, I'm now on a fixed income. I can't afford another 10, 13% aside from what I'm paying the federal government. So then they say, well, I found me a state, possibly Arizona, possibly Nevada, wherever, where I don't have to pay sales tax. So that's a lot more of that income that they generate at the end of the month, pension income, that they can they can feel free that it's not being taxed, or feel that it's not being taxed, and therefore it's just a disposable income that they can utilize again for living expenses, right? And I think that's one of the reasons that I hear that people, at least in some of the circle of friends that I have, they say, well, I'm just waiting to get to retirement age.
Yeah.
And hopefully by then, I don't have to pay no more state taxes. And again, to your point, a lot of them have they're very disconnected to the fact that California is seen as a sanctuary state, and they don't like the fact that it's free here, free there, free there. But I think people fail to see that even within the freebies that everybody talks about, they're also taking in. Mm-hmm. It's just that that's not seen. I think the playbook or whatever is being said out in the media, it's mainly this is what you're giving out, this is what you're doing, and it really plays bad in California's outlook, right? But frankly, there's also monies coming in, or else we wouldn't be considered, and we're almost considered the 4th largest economy in the world. Mm-hmm. So that has to say something. We're not just making and printing money. Something's happening. We're generating revenues, right?
But they're incentivizing the corporations. They're not incentivizing the people coming to work at those corporations. They're not. I'm not living in Texas and California saying here's a handout. We'll let you be tax free for a year, or we'll let there's. Why would I come here? More taxes, more invasion of my liberties. Property is 100 times more expensive, and taxes are more like. I feel like California does it. We're kind of like, it's okay. People can leave. They're not leaving that bad. Like, we're just smothering this fear that people are leaving, instead of saying, well, California's great. This is why you should move to us. This is, what we can do to continue to bring more people in. It's not there.
I think the population has a lot to do with it, right? And businesses do accept those extra cost or extra regulations, because this is where the consumers are, right? The majority of the consumers. You base yourself out in Vermont, and now your shipping cost just goes up exponentially. And so probably the difference what you were saving, well, now you got to increase your costs so you can pass those shipping costs through your clientele, and it becomes very difficult to be almost a retailer or a wholesaler, because because of the distance and gas prices going up, the cost of transportation going up. I think all those things are factors. So I think a lot of the manufacturing corporations, farming, all of that has stayed grounded here and has been relatively successful because of the range or the net that they can cast out, and there's just all these dense populations, But I remember growing up or even now, you watch movies about people talking about California, and you talk about those beaches, and you talk about, Los Angeles and the Bay Area, Yosemite National Park, and how beautiful it is, right? The reality is, though, why would people want to come here? Well, there's a lot of work, a lot of ag work, and so you get a lot of individuals that come out and are willing to settle in the Central Valley because it's less, it costs less. You have jobs, specifically in agriculture, and then you're still a couple hours away, like you mentioned, from some of these like just amazing cities, highly sought after people, high tourist areas. And then that's when you start seeing, that entrepreneur spirit, where people are starting to, open up little, coffee shops, coffee on wheels, and, taking over, all of this real estate in order to serve those people and that high traffic, right? So, you could make a living. I have clients that, I do loans for, and they're buying homes, and, they do some of the things that you would never think would work. They have they do their taquizas. They do taco sales at parties, and they just sit there and cook for you, and and they're making a pretty dang good living, because the amount of people that are here, they're able to capitalize on that volume, and those individuals are making a good living, enough to buy a home here in the Central Valley. So I think there's still opportunity here.
Yeah, and one of the things that, and I hate to compare different states because I don't know the states that well, but I do know that property taxes, for example, in Texas are a lot higher than they are here. So earlier to what your point is that, it kind of balances out in a way. Yes, you get a house really cheap, you may not pay a lot of state taxes, but when it comes to property taxes, then you are paying quite a bit there. And not only that, because there's such a big demand now, if there are Californians that are going there, that creates a price increase as well. So you're going to start seeing what you see in California. And one of the cities that really took shape in that fashion was Austin, Texas. Prices out there are astronomical now, huge. They're compared to San Francisco, and everybody, all these techs were moving out to that area because it became an affordable city, the next San Francisco, so to speak. But I mean, now it's becoming unaffordable. And if you go to Austin, I mean, I happen to go there for a conference, and shoot, man, I got to tell you that if you thought homelessness was bad in San Francisco, Austin's no different. So the same issues that you're facing here, you're starting to see in these metropolitan areas, or at least these dense population areas, because that seems to follow. People unhomed or unhoused people tend to follow wherever there's resources for them, right? Whether it be resources for care facilities, there's restaurants, food, anything that makes it easier for them to stay afloat, versus in an area that's impoverished and there's nothing there, right? You hardly ever see that. I came from a town of the majority were migrant families, and it was very rare to see someone that was homeless there. And I don't know if that was because for our culture it was almost a shame to see someone there that was a homeless person, right? I mean, that belonged to such and such family. What a shame. And nobody wanted to take that shame, right? But I mean, there's other issues that arise for homelessness, right? I mean, we know that mental health and what have you, drug addiction and what have you. But I mean, at least in these communities, it wasn't as visible for me growing up in this population of 3,000. Now you're looking at millions, then obviously you're going to see a lot more. And these are the places that I said, like San Francisco. You're going to see them in Austin, and I'm sure every other metropolitan area and that's densely populated. Chicago. You can go down to I don't know what other El Paso, Dallas. You'll have those areas that are also flooded by people that are unhoused. So it's not just a very common issue here in California. It's common everywhere. I think people are trying to find these little areas of pieces of land where they feel like this is my sanctuary, away from all the government, away from everything else. Well, I mean, we've seen that happen. It happens here. We have folks up in the foothills that want to have that liberty of feeling like, I don't want government. But yet, sometimes you need government. Well, who's going to fix my roads?
Yeah.
Well, who's going to fix that? And there's disputes there. I mean, you want government, but you don't want big government. You want only to settle certain business things or how you. But it's when it's overshadowed that I think people begin to feel like, this isn't for me. You know, government shouldn't be this big, and especially making decisions in my civil liberties or freedoms, what have you, right? But I think as this country gets bigger, and you have to have some sort of structure, or else there's chaos.
Yeah.
History has taught us that. So.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff.
America.
So let's go around the table. If money wasn't an issue, what would be the ideal? Where would you like to? What place would you like to try? Maybe even if it was just for a few years.
We talked about. I mean, I think, if we were going to maintain the business, I think we were talking about Texas just because it has a lot more corporate tax breaks and stuff. You know, if we were going to reopen something. But I think anything southern. I mean, I like the heat. I don't do the snow. I don't do the rain. I like warm areas.
Yeah,
so, that's where I'd go.
That'd be your Louisiana, maybe New Orleans.
Yeah, I don't know about the alligators and all that.
So, and that's one thing. If you look at our country, everything that's in the mid of our country is kind of like just middle ground for like good heat, right? But anything just south of that starts getting humid, and closer to the equator, you start getting hot.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what we feel here in California, right? Unless you're next to the ocean, you're not going to feel that ocean breeze.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be pretty hot. And the further north you go, obviously the greener, the more, there's folks that just love to live, in extreme cold, the weather, right? They like to have that Canadian, the feel like Alaska, right?
Good.
And so good question, because sometimes I feel like, well, maybe, I just want to experience living out in a cabin somewhere up up top, right? But I
Grow a
know
beard.
that I probably wouldn't last there that long.
Yeah.
At least because I don't have it here a lot, right? You go out the cabin out there and you experience it for a week, but really, I mean, by the time you get there and get acclimated, it's like you're just barely getting in the feel of it.
Yeah.
But if you're there for several months, then you would really know. The problem is, would my family follow me?
Yeah.
And knowing my wife, I think I would have a hard time because, you know, it's hard to acclimate yourself to that, especially when
Yeah.
you have a lifestyle already here. So I personally would say, if I had to make a move, maybe somewhere up in the higher areas like Wyoming, Montana, somewhere in those areas. But I mean, I'd like to see some forestry, right? I'd like to be around the grizzly land or something like that.
Yeah.
Just where I'm fenced in, right? No grizzlies coming in. Give me there for a month or two and then be back. And then after 2-3 months, I say, you know what? I miss California. I want to come back.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what California offers. You get to be in your cabin for a week, and then your wife says, "What the heck? Where's all the people? Well, let's go out
Yeah,
to the
go.
city, and we'll go to the bay and have that lifestyle, and then let's go down to LA and throw on our swim trunks and walk around, with no shirt on
Venice Beach.
till midnight, because it just feels good. The weather's perfect, right? Then let's go to Central Valley and get some asada with the family, and
That's it.
have some guy cooking for us."
Santa Cruz, Pismo.
But-
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so and I think like when you mention like Wyoming and things like that, New York, it all depends how much money you have when you're
Correct.
there too, right? I've always thought, man, I'd like to experience New York, but I kind of want to live in New York the way Jay-Z lives. I want to be there in my penthouse with 180 views, and come down and come down the escalator like Donald Trump, and be greeted by everybody, and but I think the reality of most of these big cities is there's some negative. If you're out in Montana, you talk about a cabin. Well, I'm sure there's people that live in dang near cabins, but if they're probably not very wealthy, and their
Rural.
situations are probably a lot more harsh than you would imagine. But if you're living like Yellowstone, and you have hundreds of acres of property, and you have horses running around, that's a different story. So I could see that being beautiful too.
When
But-
you said money wasn't a factor, then that's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of what I was throwing.
Yeah.
out. I wasn't trying to be, because
Yeah.
if money's a factor, then I would have to adjust. Right?
But yeah, I would personally do like if I had a couple years with all funded, all expenses paid, I'd probably want to check out New York, because I too like history. I think almost like, hey, this is kind of where it all started, right? A lot of businesses started here. A lot of the different types of social behaviors, everything's just kind of there. And I'd want to stay around Wall Street somewhere and just kind of see how those guys live. And I think it would be a neat experience for sure. But at the end of the day, I'm coming back here to California.
You know what? And I'm glad you said that, because maybe in our next show, what we can do is we can talk about what are the limitations. Why is it that we restrict ourselves in accomplishing these particular goals, or at least visions of this is the way it would be, right? Because I think for us, the way we've seen the structure of our society is that we ground ourselves to a certain place. We have a family, and then we stay there. We get old and we die there, and generations come from there. But too many of us, we have that thing constantly spinning in the back of our head, saying, well, if I had the ability to do it, I would be in New York. Because like you, I think the same way. I visited New York, and I try to walk the streets like in New York, but it's not the same, because I'm only there for a very small. I don't know their experiences. I rode the subway to Coney Island, and I don't know the experience either. I was a little timid. I was like
You didn't get a chance to get mugged yet? And,
well, no, but it was an
Get that out
experience.
of the way?
It was an experience, but it wasn't like what I see and what TV has shown me, what media showed me is
Yeah.
like these are everyday people that go to work, boom, boom, and utilizing this transit system to be able to get to certain places, right? Whether it's home, back to work, and stuff. But a lot of times we restrict ourselves from going further, right? And I understand there's factors. We have to work, we have to make money, we have to make a living, we have kids, we have school, we have everything. But I like that, because maybe we should start diving into our subconscious and find out what is it that the ball and chain that keeps us here. Not only as an individual, but with their families.
Yeah.
Because people do it. People just say, screw that ball and chain, I'm out. And this is why they exit California.
Yeah, and I know that, as parents, which we all are, sometimes we live through our kids, and typically it's like through sports, right? We, go be the best and all this stuff. But I think when I think about it, I do that also with my sons when it comes to life after high school, college specifically. And it's like, I do want them to go experience a different state. Now, obviously my wife fears that they're going to fall in love and end up not coming back, but yeah, it's like, man, it would be so great for them to experience that, because I feel the same way, like, man, I didn't get to experience that.
Lived through them, right?
And so it's like, man, hey, go experience that, right? Go learn how these different people, live and bring that back. And I think those, oftentimes when you see people come to California, very rare, but when they do come to California, they're usually bringing something with them, right? They're usually bringing a new idea, a new service, a new product, and they're opening up shop. They have a plan, they have a vision, because something's working over there. So there's a lot of benefit to seeing the world. And not just on vacation, over the weekend, because like you said, there's just not enough time to get acclimated to the lifestyle and kind of adjust. But I think if you're living out there for a year or two, that makes a difference. You can, yeah.
What do you think, Roy? Here's a question for you. I mean, maybe, but is your family originated in California? Because I know my family wasn't, right? So somehow we're injected here, and we bring about the businesses and or the culture that exists here. And that's the beauty of having a diverse cultures within our country. And like you said, if your son goes to New York, for example, and marries a New Yorker, comes back, and there's a different, there's something different. I know a lot of folks here. I don't say a lot, but I know some folks that are from New York, established themselves here, and they brought amazing, their families, their structure, and they love California. Why did you choose California? Well, they would say the same thing. I didn't find that in New York. I wanted to get out of New York.
Yeah.
What's no different? People want to get out and experience outside of California, but at the end of the day, a lot of them want to make it back. They may find beauty somewhere, and that may be where they plant their seed, and that may be the home for them. But I mean, that's the beauty of our history as humans. We've encountered areas where we've rooted, and we spread our seed, and next thing you know, you're everywhere, right?
I
And
like
what
that
mean
term,
by that,
spread your
Well,
seed.
but that's always the thing with the joke with California, is that we're the ones that just kept going west, right? We just kept saying, I don't like this place, and kept moving and kept
Yeah.
moving until we hit the water.
We
and
hit the
couldn't go
water.
any further.
Well, I mean, we hit as far as Japan, or at least the Hawaiian Islands, right?
Yeah, and those
Yeah.
people swam
Yeah,
around
they're
out of
like,
here.
"Get me outta here."
Yeah, no, I, as you were talking about these different places, and you said, my son meets somebody in New York, whatever. It's funny how the stereotypes the natural stereotypes that we have of, different states, right? And I always joke, I always tell my son, oh man, go, we'll probably be at a wedding at some big farm in Alabama, and hey, Pa, right? They'll be talking to me, and I'll be all exotic from California. They'll be thinking that, I'm this Mexican guy that they never seen before, all this stuff. And my sons are, a lot light skinned than me, so that's why I'm like, I'll be with my dark skin. There'll be, all this stuff. But then when you said New York, I was thinking, I don't know, man. I'm a little intimidated, because I'm assuming they're wealthy. The in-laws would be very wealthy, very uptight in their proper suits and judging me, and you know what I mean? But every state has their low, middle, upper class, and so that's part of, not just going for the vacation, but going and living and experiencing and finding those hidden gems or diamonds in the rough.
I like that, because I'd like to pick up on that if we will, and pick up on just those restrictions. What is it that puts us or binds us from going out there? Obviously, finance is one of them. But you look at some of these folks, and I'm not saying go out there and leave your family and leave everything. That's not it. It's just that there's something that keeps us here, right?
Yeah.
And we don't really talk about it, because we've been accustomed to how the structure is in place now. This is how society has conditioned us to believe that this is how you have to do it. You have to work 5 days a week, sometimes 6. Mm-hmm. You have to put 8 to 10 hours a day. So the only time you really have left after that is really to go out and do the errands that you normally do with the kids, getting involved in everything. But we also condition that. We then indoctrinate them to teach them the same thing, and essentially they do the same thing over and over and over. And essentially, when these little glimpses of excitement of me being out there and doing this, it's just a short-lived excitement for this long period of like work in order to even get that kind of glimpse. So maybe we can pick up on that and brush up on it over the week. Bring it back, and this is what we come up with. I think it'd be interesting for our viewers, but if you have any comments regarding why you would leave California, please let us know. We'd like to get your comments on your views of why California is no longer the place to be, or if you think that it is, provide your comments, right?
And if you are out of state and would like for us to experience your life in your state and city, provide room, board, and a salary for 1 month.
Let us talk
We
about
will go and we will move in with
and
you
we will
for a month.
shoot our show in your home,
In your living room.
just so that we can get the experience of what
There
it
you
is
go.
to live in Vermont, Maine, or maybe Arkansas.
Vermont. Something's going on with you in Vermont. Huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen, great conversation today. We're going to wrap it up there. And I'm sure the rest of the day we're going to spend thinking about, where are we going to go?
Yeah.
That's
if
right.
if California goes underwater, the mega quake happens,
There
right?
you go.
All right. Well, like, subscribe, and most importantly, tune in next week for the next show. Take care.
I was gonna say if you wanted to add.